Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland preview podcast following a much needed international break. League football is back, and after a fortnight of stewing on a defeat at Coventry City, we've got 8 games, I think, left to have a right good go at gaining a bit of momentum, securing playoffs, and hopefully at some point this season getting back to the Premier League. And the last man to lead Sunderland to a successful playoff run is back this Saturday, which I think might be booed by some of the listeners as you're listening right now, in the shape of Alex Neil, as we welcome his Millwall side to the Stadium of Light. And as always, to help us preview the visit of Millwall, is the always excellent Alex Grace. Alex, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you, buddy. Yourself?
I'm getting by. I think I needed that international break. I'm not going to lie. Not a rough couple of weeks at Sunderland, but it was an international break that was needed. But I was going to say, last time you were on, Pete went and did it because I was in Chicago, so I feel like we haven't caught up for a while.
Going to have been the Stadium of Light last year, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Would be the last time. Yes. Yeah. I mean, how was Chicago? Was it all right?
really nice, mate. Yeah, I would love to go
Good.
back. As much as I enjoyed going to the match on Saturday, I would like to go back. Like I say, I feel like I say this a lot, right? But plenty's changed at Millwall since we last spoke, or even since you last spoke to Pete. But we'll start
Yes.
from the top. Let's go international break. You picked up a late injury time when I watched the game against Stoke. So I know the answer to this a little bit, but I want your perspective. How was the performance?
Do you know what it was? I think it was one of those games where if any team was gonna win it, it was going to be Millwall that won it. But Stoke were happy to take the point and get back on the bus and say thank you very much. It's a point. It's a clean sheet. Let's move on. You know, from a toughish away game. The point to them would have been a bigger, really. For us, the point, maybe the win is it's just kept a few hopes alive for what can happen over the course of the next 8 games.
I was going to say, because you look at the last 5 games, take out the FA Cup game because you're playing a Premier League team, and we all know what that can be like these days. The difference between the leagues is unfortunately quite stark. But 3 wins in the last 5, quite promising in many ways. One of those defeats came against Millwall. Came against Leeds. You're 6 points away from the playoffs. Is the optimism around Millwall that you can make that sort of late charge? Because there's always one team, isn't there?
There is always one. The only caveat I would give to it is the run of away games is tough. I mean, just had Leeds, Sunderland next, then Sheffield United, then Blackburn, then Burnley. I mean, they are very tough games. While the pressure won't actually be on us to go and win the games, to be fair, it's going to be on those teams to unlock us and and for them to get the win. I mean, like Sunderland, for instance, that might be a little bit of pressure building now to make sure you're going into the playoffs. Just if it's fairly certain you're going to be in them, isn't it? So it's going in with a bit of momentum. The last thing you want to do is go into the playoffs with no momentum. And I do think if a team does sneak in there, I think it will be very, very interesting because the team that finished sixth obviously will play the team that finished third. And I see that automatic race going right down to the final day. Burnley, Leeds, Sheffield United, they've been the best 3 teams. So yeah, I can see that going the whole way through.
Interesting to see who gets them in sixth, but at the same time, you've got potentially us. Oh God, I'm thinking about it already. We're 8 games away. Like, don't worry, Graham. Don't worry just yet. We might not play Coventry, but look, we need to chat about Alex Neil. But before we do, I've got to ask about Neil Harris. We've had good chats about Neil Harris, a manager that seems to go to Millwall and do well as a player or as a manager, doing fairly well in the league. Not amazing, doing quite well. In his second spell as manager, well liked. And then he comes out and has a fairly odd press conference where he attacks some of the fans, or at least that's how they feel. And shortly afterwards, he says, "Look, I'm away." And he has 2 games. He goes after a 1-0 defeat to Middlesbrough. I kept quite a close eye on it because I found it quite interesting because it's something you don't normally see. But for those who don't know, can you run me through Harris's time at the Den and how it came to an end? And in particular, those last few weeks and the press conference and how that came to pass?
The whole the whole way he left was a bit strange, in terms of taking another 2 games. Personally, I think what happened is I don't think that news was supposed to come out. I think someone's obviously found out, and they've had to address it earlier than what was planned. I mean, because that week was a double game week, so the news came out on the Tuesday, I think it was, and we were playing Sheffield United on the Wednesday, and then away to Middlesbrough. So yeah, I think it was. I don't think the news was designed to come out the way it did. In a way, of course, made it more difficult. I wouldn't say I was too surprised that he went. And as much as, look, he's a club legend. He'll always be a club legend. He's cemented his legacy as a player and now a manager twice. As I'm not being funny, we were in a perilous position when he came back. It was touch and go for a while as to, if they'd stay up, and it wasn't looking good. And he came in, he galvanized the team, he made them hard to beat, and he worked miracles. He finished 13th, I think, in the end, and won five in a row towards the end of the season. So, um, yeah, I mean, to be fair, over the summer, things were difficult. There was the change, like the structure of the club changed. Steve Cavan had been there for a long time as a chief executive. He moved on. Alex Aldridge moved on. Um, and they came up with a new way of working. They brought in the head of recruitment or director of football or whatever his title is, Steve Gallen. They brought him in. He's in charge of the recruitment and everything like that. So I'm not sure if he was a massive fan of how those changes were going to implement. Obviously, he wanted to give it a go. I think that it very much was touch and go after the summer window as to whether he'd stay or not, because there was a lot of frustration back in the summer, in terms of he didn't get the players in, took him a long time to get moving. I think it was after Bristol City where we were winning, and then I think 5 minutes to go or something, we were winning, and then lost 4-3 right in stoppage time. And he called out the board after that about not getting the players in he wants, not getting this, and left you know, the depth the squad had was very poor at the start of the season. And then losing Zian Fleming on deadline day didn't help his mood either. So that made things tough. But in terms of, I think his departure was coming, because he was only scheduled to stay until the end of this season anyway. His contract was only until then. And yeah, at Oxford away, I believe it was. We'd drawn 1-1. He didn't get the best reception from a section of the fan base. Been on a decent run, I think it was 7 unbeaten or something like that. Didn't get a great reaction. And then they lost at home to Coventry. That's I think Frank Lampard's first or second game in charge. And they lost that, and then that's when that comment came out about thickos, and no one was sure whether that was intended at the fan base, whether it was intended at the board. No one was quite sure. After that press, now I was in that press conference, and he was very agitated, very touchy, very. I've seen him like that before. He left shortly after that, the first time round. We had a very prickly press conference after I think it was a 2-0 defeat to QPR at home or something like that. We played the following Tuesday or Wednesday away to Luton, and we played really poorly in the first half. And he'd made his mind up at half time in that game that he was going. And yeah, there was a lot of similarities to that press conference against QPR with that one at the end there, against Coventry. And you notice a massive difference in him when you spoke to him after Sheffield United. It was as calm as anything, and it was like a weight had been lifted for him, after he decided that he was going. And look, I don't blame him, because he didn't feel he could work in that arrangement. And that's him saying, "Do you know what? Right, I need to put the need of the football club ahead of my own." And yeah, so of course we were sad to see him go, but I think it's worked out good for both parties. He's got a new job at Cambridge now. Obviously, it looks like they're unfortunately he's going to suffer a relegation there, but I don't really think they can blame him for that. I think they were well gone before he got there. So, but he's got another project now to look forward to, and as a club, you look at Millwall now have moved on to their next stage. So I don't think it'll ever be the end. You can never say that he'll never return because, at the end of the day, it's his football club, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think he's aligned, and I think you look at the other jobs he's had. They've been in like League One, League Two, and yet he can jump into a Championship job and it fits in always with Millwall. I don't know. I can't comment, but I feel like he couldn't really do that jump anywhere else. So it's definitely his football club. But Alex Neil, uh, not liked in these parts largely for how he left. Mainly, I think that it is that leaving to go watch Stoke City play whilst we were playing Norwich at home, but. I cannot deny that there's a definite case that he did an awful lot of good for Sunderland in the sense that he got us promoted. He was the man that got us promoted. Talked about momentum before in playoffs. I'll always remember how much he galvanised us towards that and how confident he made us feel going into the playoffs. And as a Sunderland fan, you're never massively confident. But how have
Mm.
you found his first 3 months of management? Because looking back to when he was at Sunderland, hindsight's wonderful, and what he's done angered me and has angered a lot of fans. But I absolutely loved him in the first few months.
Yeah, I mean, it had a bit of a sticky start.
Hmm.
But I think you got to look at the challenges he was facing when he walked in. He had a game New Year's Day. It's his first game in charge. Yeah, a former manager coming back for the first time as well in Gary Rowett. Lost that 1-0, and immediately then there's pressure because you've lost your first game. We had Sheffield Wednesday after that, doesn't win there. Pressure builds. I think we had Hull at home, lost that one as well. So straight away, you got a bit of pressures beginning to build because you need to get a result, and you look at where we were in the table at that stage as well. There was the danger of getting dragged in to that battle at the bottom. But no, look, he's now managed to get his feet under the table. He's got the team playing how he wants to play or what he thinks is best based on the current squad. Had a very good January window, bringing players in, and that's helped. I mean, we've suffered a lot with injuries, especially top end of the pitch, and with right backs. We don't have a recognised right back now, so I mean, we're playing with a centre back at right back now. So he's had his challenges, but do you know what? I think he's done well. I think he's only lost three. I think he's lost 4 league games, 3 league games, 4 league games. It's not a lot, and it's not been the easiest of runs either. I know you lost at Leeds the other week, but in terms of he's gotten scoring goals as well. They've prior to I think whether we played at home and lost 2-0 to Bristol City. I
Hmm.
think they'd scored in 8 or 9 consecutive games at that stage, and it's still the club. It's still club. I think that's the sixth best defense in the league. So you know he hasn't changed much in terms of how the style is because I think Joe Edwards learnt last season. You come in, you change a club style of play midway through a season, it can have catastrophic consequences. And he's a manager. Look, he's got experience at this level. He knows how to win games at this level, and he knows he needs to just see this season out and then bring his ideas in for the next campaign.
He said today, I read a quote from him today where he said Millwall were a proper football club and that it was everything he expected it to be and more. We talked about how Neil Harris just connected with Millwall. That came through him being a player and a legend as a player, and then obviously doing well as a manager because he had that backing. But how much of a good fit does Alex Neil feel with Millwall? I know you can't judge after 3 months, but from what you've seen so far, does it feel like the right fit between manager and club?
Yeah, see, when he arrived, I thought it reminded me a lot of the Gary Rowett appointment. Very safe, very secure appointment. You're not going to get relegated. You're not going to be in any that sort of trouble. It's just whether you've got what it takes to make that next step to get in the playoffs. I mean, look, we came so close um, a couple of seasons ago, came so close. and then handed it to Sunderland instead. But yeah, I mean, we came so close that year, and that when that didn't happen, the effect it had on the football club as a whole, the end of, I mean, it brought the end really for a crop of players, but also it brought an end for the manager. It brought an end tragically to John Berylson as well, and that loss to the football club was huge. And for a club that had been so stable for so long, not only had it had an owner for so long, but Gary had been in charge for, I think, 4 years, just coming up 4 years. I think he was 3 days short of 4 years when he quit. So a club that had been so stable for so many years, then and then before Gary, you had Neil was in for 5 years. So you've had such a long reign of managers, two managers in 9 years. I mean, it's unheard of in modern day football, isn't it? So, you know, such a long road. You then look at the job that Alex Neil done at Preston, for instance. They're a long time, built a good team up. Yeah, things maybe didn't end particularly well there. Or again, a natural conclusion of a reign, like it was for Gary. It was a natural end to what had been a good job done, but unfortunately, that step could be taken. I think with the way the club are going to work now, in terms of being a lot more self-sustainable, bringing players through, selling them on, they will get the opportunities now, perhaps to bring in some players who might just have that extra bit of cutting edge, which might make a difference in getting into that top six. And I think that's why they've brought Alex Neil in, someone who knows the playoff system,
Hmm.
twice won promotion through the playoffs, so knows how to get there, knows how to navigate them as well. And yeah, I think he's a very good fit. Safe, but very good fit. And my dealings with him, do you know what? He's a gentleman, absolute gentleman. And you could say a bit like Gary when he came to Millwall, he's got something to prove. After leaving Stoke, it wasn't particularly great for him, so he's got a point to prove. And that worked well for Millwall with Gary because we had 4 very good years. And you look at it this year, there's been a year he's come in and he's had to stabilise it and get it sorted to how he wants it. But he'll be a good fit going forward.
I dread saying this, but we never beat Alex Neil when he was Stoke manager, and it felt like everyone else beat Stoke. So it's like he kind of knew how to out tactic us. He actually beat us 5-1 at the Stadium Light in the season we made the playoffs. So I
Yes,
feel
I
like,
remember.
yeah, I remember it, but not the night. I don't remember the night very well. I got off at the wrong train stop, actually. I drowned my sorrows, shall we say, that night.
Yeah.
But he seems to have the knack of getting one honest, and I'm really hoping that doesn't continue because the minute that he left Stoke, we beat Stoke comfortably under with
Mm.
Michael Beale as the manager. So look, it's fair to
Oh,
say that,
Jesus.
yeah, I think it's fair to say that he had a an ability to understand how to play against Sunderland. Obviously, he's never came up against Regis Lebris so far. I think previously it
Mm.
was Tony Mowbray in his previous games when he had beat us, and as it was, both managers were sacked. So I don't think any other manager came up against each other, to my knowledge. I could be wrong with that, but you're someone who deals with Alex on a relatively daily basis with press conferences and stuff like that. He's always tried to play down the Sunderland aspect. I think he spoke last year about saying how he feels like he's been made the villain. He doesn't really feel that way when he was at Stoke. But does he feel up for this one? Does he feel like you talked before about points to prove? Does he feel like he has a point to prove towards Sunderland potentially, or does it not?
I
Does it feel like you're trying
wouldn't,
to talk it down?
I wouldn't say there's a massive point to prove because, not being funny, you look at the job he done at Sunderland, it was a
That
very
was
good
good.
job.
Yeah, yeah, very good.
So, I think, look, any manager when they go back to a former club, I mean, I asked Gary Rowett the same question when he came back with Oxford. I said to him, "Is there, you know, is there a thing that you want to beat a former club? Because does it show them what they're missing, show them they made the wrong decision, this, that, and the other thing? In Gary's instance and in Alex Neil's instance, both of them chose to leave their club. So it's it's not like you're saying to the club, well, you got rid of me and this is what I've done since I've left. I've come back now and this is what I'm going to do. Under Gary, funny enough, he had a great record at his former clubs. I mean, the amount of times we went to Derby and won, Stoke and won, Birmingham and got a decent result. I think as an ex-manager, will always like to. I think more than anything, they want to make sure they don't lose when they go back to a former club, and I think that's the position as a manager when because they're competitive anyway. And if you look at the situation that Millwall are in now, really 6 points off the playoffs, they can't afford to lose this game. If they want to get in the playoffs, they can't afford to lose it. It's as simple as that. I think they probably need to win 7 out of 8 if they're going to get in there. Which is incredibly unlikely. But 7 out of 8, you never know. It's possible. But no, I think he'll go there with the feeling of if he comes away with a win, he'll feel justified by saying, well, look, this is what I did for you. You can give me grief all you want for leaving, but this is what I did, and the end. I mean, I do always want to know what the temptation is about Stoke because
Me too, mate.
I'm not being funny.
Money?
Any manager. I mean, you look at the managers they've had since they come down. Gary, he left Derby to go there. Didn't work. Who'd they have? Nathan Jones.
Schumacher.
Jesus, Nathan
Yeah.
Jones. Good God, we nearly had him at Millwall. Then there was Stephen Schumacher, Alex Neil, Mark Robbins. Now, I mean, it's. I think it's a poison chalice.
Uh-huh. So do
It's.
I.
It's like the job of the Prime Minister of the country, isn't it? It is a poison chalice job, and it's got to be money. That's got to be the only thing that manages to tempt people to Stoke. Because, I mean,
What's the pull that they have? Because it's a tough gig. And
oh, it
it's,
is. The thing is, though, if you're the manager that can do it, you're
yeah.
the hero.
And do
That's
managers have that feeling
that's
where
the thing.
they
Yeah,
always
if
feel
you
they
can
can do
go
it?
there and you can turn them around, because I'm not being funny, you'll have the financial power to do it. But Stoke aren't short of money. The
No.
Coates family are a very well-off family. So, they're not short of money. But yeah, no, it's a bloody hard task, is
It's
what
not
I would
it's
say.
it's not for me. It wouldn't be for me. I love saying that money does talk. So if you're listening to talk, I can
Mm,
discuss things potentially because yeah. Well, anyway, um, looking at the squad, we've touched before on Honeyman and what more. I think we
mm,
kind of know how they're doing well. Look, hard-working boys will run all day for you. We know what the situation with that is. But when it comes to people who have a point to prove, I don't think in an angry way, but I think Aaron Connolly will probably feel like he has something to prove to Sunderland because I think it was well documented. He came and he spoke really, really well and really openly about his problems with alcohol previously before he came to
mhm.
Sunderland. And hopefully, I really hope he's continuing to do really well in that. And any struggles that he has got, he's getting the best possible help. I'm sure he is, and I'm sure him being honest and open about it has really helped that situation in that addiction in particular. But on the pitch, it just didn't really work for Sunderland. Like it just didn't, and that's something that just happened. It's no fault of his. No one's angry at him, and I'm sure he's not angry at us. But I'm sure he feels he could have done more of a job at Sunderland because naturally, as a professional footballer, you should be feeling that. But he stayed here. He scored one goal, a good goal against Millwall of all teams, and then he kind of left. Didn't really work out. How's he started at Millwall? Because he missed a penalty, and he's one of his first games. It might have been his debut, but then he has
Oh,
scored
his debut
since.
away at Luton, that penalty.
Yeah,
Yeah, that penalty. Mate, if you're going to go down the middle, you've got to put some power on it or you've got to lift it. Oh, dear. Yeah. Do you know, we've had a problem with penalties this season. We've had 3 penalties and missed 2 of them. Sorry, 4 penalties and missed 2 of them. Oh, dear. But we found now the person to take the penalties is Ivanovic. Give it to the Serbian and you'll score. Yeah, I mean, look. he's someone for me who he needs regular game time. You know what I mean? He needs to be playing regularly. He needs to feel like he's involved. And from what I've seen of him so far, he's someone for me who has definitely got a point to prove. I would say that, with all the background noise and everything about him. But do you know what? He's got his head down and he's worked hard. And that is the best way to silence any critics in football, is to literally get your head down and work. You know, all right, you might not score 10, 15, 20 goals, but if a manager can see what you're doing, players, and your teammates can see what you're doing, you've earned their respect, and he's someone who will come in and he'll give his all. I mean, if you look at Millwall, right, it's a club where players will go, and I don't mean this harshly about my own football club, but it's a place where players will go because they've not had a great experience at a higher up club, you know, or a player that's not quite made it, or a player that's forming the next level of his career. You look at Harry Kane, for instance, right? He often credits his loan at Millwall as to what made him the player he is today. And the amount of young players that we have come on loan from Premier League clubs and stuff like that, we turn them into really good footballers and we give them a good start in football. And I think that's important. And for someone like Aaron Conley, look, his contract's up at the end of the season. He may well not extend it. But for what he's been able to get, he's got regular football, he's scored a couple of goals as well. So yeah, look, I think he's someone who's definitely got a future at the club if he wants it. And someone I think that Alex Neil will look to carry and keep because, you know, it's a player with a point to prove. And also it's an option at the top end of the pitch, which we are still a little bit short on.
Yeah, I remember when he went, he was saying there was not that many players there. He gives him the number nine shirt. And I think, look, I only watched 4 months at Aaron Conley, but I wish him massively well because I think there has been a lot of noise around him. He certainly worked
Mm.
hard when he was here. It just didn't work. And that just sometimes happens. But when you look at players that really have kicked on since Alex Neil's come in, you touched on before, the Serbian boy Ivanovic.
Mm.
I thought he'd came in January, and I looked through his stats, and basically he's been there most of the season. Just didn't
Yeah,
really
came in the
score.
summer, deadline day.
But then he didn't really score until Alex Neil came in. He's got like six since then. Seems like
Yeah.
a daft question, but he's the man to watch. I take it on Saturday. He's only 20 as well.
Yeah, no, he's in good form. What Alex Neil's done really well with the two main strikers is he's rotated them quite well.
Hmm.
So one week it's been Ivanovic, the next game it's been Josh Coburn. Since Josh has come back from injury, yeah, so he's sort of taken it in turns, and then against Stoke he started both of them. So it's sort of hard to know because you'll know from his time at Sunderland that he will keep you guessing, and he bases his team based on his opponent. So you can never quite guarantee what side's going to play. I mean, generally we've lined up in a 4-2-3-1, um, but against Stoke it was more like a 4-4-2 with the two strikers. So really interesting to know how it's gonna go. But if Ivanovic is playing, I would say, yeah, look, he is the one to watch because he he is finding the net a bit more regularly now. He's playing more, which helps. And I think he fits into the system. The players are helping him out a bit more, and I think Alex Neil's potentially changing his role a little bit from what the role was under Neil Harris.
Going back to the game that we played, I don't really want to, but I'm going to go back to it anyway because it's part of the show and it's part of the questions. But we had like a lot of injuries going into that game, from my knowledge,
Yeah,
and
I remember.
suspensions and stuff like that. And look, we don't concede at the end, and you go, bloody hell, what a great performance as it was. Like we conceded, and it's one of those games where we've had this season where you've gone, oh God. But I think Pete would have asked you earlier in the season when you were on the preview show which player you'd take from Sunderland to put into Millwall's team, I've changed it a bit because you've seen us now. We're a bit of a different team then because of the things I just mentioned. But who was the player or players that impressed you most in our last fixture at the Den?
Do you know what? I thought their defense was outstanding. The defense was absolutely outstanding that day because we peppered the box with crosses and everything like that. I mean, typical Neil Harris. Sorry, a
Did what
typical,
we did. We choked at the end.
yeah, a typical Harris team, right? We loaded the box, and the amount of times they headed it out and they defended their box, and they were outstanding with it. And for me, that showed to me that a team that is extremely or a team that was just so determined to defend their goal. And that for me was really important because I think you have to have that in a team. Because if you don't, if you haven't got someone who can defend and who can lead your team, then it's not, what's the word? It's I've always said defense is the heart of the team. And that's exactly what they were. I mean, you think the two centre backs that day were
DB and
Ballard and
Mepham.
Mepham. Yeah, Ballard and Mepham were the two. Ballard we know all about, right? Was outstanding for Millwall. Yeah, he had a season on loan with us and was outstanding. And I think they gave man of the match that day was given to Mepham, I think. Yeah, according to this, yeah, it was Mepham. The amount of headers out of the box, and I've always said I love Luke O'Nine. Luke
Me
O'Nine for
too.
me is he's brilliant. I think he's great, and he's a player that I would like. Funny enough, I would like him because where was it? It was a game. Something he jumped on someone's back.
Oh, it was Bristol City at home. It was
Yeah, jumped on the back for a piggyback. Yeah, he's
Alex
brilliant. So
Scott, I think. Oh, I mean, some
no,
people are
I
not a
have to
fan.
say.
I personally love him, but
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd happily take Dan Ballard back. I've always said that. I was gutted when we didn't manage to make the move permanent. Yeah, I mean, he's one I would have back massively. I think they've got someone there who's a threat also going forward, but
mhm.
also a rock at the back. You know, him, yeah, I mean, could you imagine a back three? Tanganga, Cooper, and Ballard? Be brilliant.
He's sadly injured, I think, until possibly the playoffs. So, but Mepham will be there, of course. It's funny you said about '09 because you're right. Our defense was great that day. And '09, the one time he came out of position, that's when we
Yeah.
conceded. The one
Yeah, the
time,
one time.
just
One time. I mean, I think it would have been harsh if we didn't take anything out of it
yeah, he battered us
because
second half.
the way we peppered the goal, I mean, and they did. I mean, they battled hard Sunderland to keep it, and yeah, I mean, it would have been criminal, I think, if we didn't take anything out of it. So safe to say we were all safe to say the Den was rocking at full time for a draw.
It's always a win, though, isn't it? When you score in the last minute, even if it's a draw, it always feels like a win. But going into the game on Saturday, I'm going to ask you a prediction final question as always, but I cannot quite decide to be honest because we're in this kind of, and Alex Neil said it today, which I kind of feel like was a dig, but that's maybe me just being annoyed at seeing his face. In terms of, we are in a bit of a flux because we're not going to get automatics. It's going to take a catastrophic fall from grace to fall out of the playoffs. But there's this kind of momentum that needs to be built because, like, something needs to happen. You can't just ghost through 8 games because if you do that, you could end up falling out of the playoffs when you least expect it. But I just get the feeling we're not going to win, and I think some of that's to do with the Alex Neil factor. I think he understands the home crowd. I think he understands how to play against Sunderland, although it'll be a bit different because he's never come up against Regis Labrise. It pains me to say, but I wasn't happy when Alex Neil left because I think he's tactically very astute. I think he'll set up well, and I think it's going to be 1-1, and I think it's going to be a frustrating 1-1 where we probably score first and you get one back, and then it's going to be a case of I think you'd probably be quite comfortable with the draw, and I think we'll struggle to break it down a bit. So I'm going to go 1-1, but I'm not happy that I've said that.
What do you think? I think five of the last seven games between the two have been draws.
Yeah,
So I mean, and then I think there's a win, there's a win each in
1
there.
nil, 3-0, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, there's a win each in there. So the games are generally, they're tight, and look, I think for Sunderland, it is difficult now because they know essentially the playoff place is secured. I mean, look, 12 points clear, 8 games to go. With all the teams that have got to play each other as well, so it's very unlikely that they're going to drop out. And top two, I think, is definitely out the question. So it's they need to build momentum. You have to go into the playoffs with a bit of momentum, but equally, you might want to get your bad run out the way before going into the playoffs. I mean, Crystal Palace um, under Ian Holloway. Oh, God, Ian Holloway. Ugh. Um, oh God, awful man. Um, they they sleepwalked into the playoffs and then pulled it together in the playoffs and then managed to win the final. So I think sometimes you have to. It can be hard work when you know you're going to be there, and I think the important thing is look, try and win the home games. Try and get the home games won. Don't worry too much about the away games because you're not going to go and take risks in an away game when you don't need to. In the position they're in, they don't need to go and chase games to win them. So of course, as a footballer, you want to win. The fans want to win. The manager wants to win. But I I think Sunderland are in a good position going into the playoffs. Um, yeah, and it's fairly likely as well that they're actually going to finish fourth as well, isn't it? Really, if you look at the table, where are they? 10 points clear of Coventry. I mean, it looks like they're going to play whoever finishes fifth. And whoever knows that's going to be Coventry, West Brom, Bristol City, Borough, Blackburn, Watford. It's a tough old gig to guess who's going to finish where. And look, from a Millwall point of view, Alex Neil's done better away from home than at home so far. So he'll feel confident going there. He'll feel confident that they can go there and take something from the game. I mean, look, you've only lost 7 games all season, so it's it's the draws. I mean, what 12 draws out of 38? I mean, we've drawn 12 as well, so it would not surprise me in the slightest. This could end up an absolute boring nil-nil draw, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case because for Millwall, really, 6 points. They have to win. It's as simple as that. They've got to go there and win because they can't afford to lose any more ground. There'll be, 6 points with 8 games to go. Say they don't lose any ground, they draw, they don't lose any ground. Okay, so you then 6 points with 7 games to go. So no, look, I think it will be a draw as well. I've got to be honest. First game back for some players after an international break as well. And those games after an international break can also be a bit lethargic, can't they? They can take
Yeah.
to get going. So yeah, it's going to be hard. I don't think it'll be the easy. I don't think it'll be, you know, a game for the ages. Let's say.
No, me neither, unfortunately. But Alex, got to catch up, mate. Always nice to see you.
Absolutely, lovely to see you.